The gathering storm High Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of the massive warship Dominion's Wrath, staring at the holographic display before him. The blue light cast strange shadows across his reptilian features as he watched the tiny dots representing human ships. These small vessels dared to enter Galactic Empire space without permission. "Sir," his communications officer hissed, "the human fleet has stopped at the border. They're just sitting there." Zextar's four eyes narrowed. In his 300 years of service to the Empire, he had never seen such boldness. The humans were a young species, barely 200 years in space. They controlled only 12 star systems, while the Empire ruled over 10,000 worlds. "How many ships?" he asked, his voice echoing through the command center. 47 vessels, sir. All of them appear to be civilian transports and small cargo ships. We detect minimal weapons." The other officers on the bridge exchanged glances. Admiral Cullen, Zextar's second-in-command, stepped forward. His insect-like features clicked as he spoke. "Perhaps they're refugees, High Admiral, running from some disaster in their territory." But Zextar wasn't convinced. He had studied human behavior for decades. These creatures were unpredictable, often acting without logic. During their short time in space, they had already fought 3 wars with neighboring species and won all of them. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through something the Empire's scientists couldn't understand. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice cracked with excitement. "Long-range scanners are picking up something massive behind the human fleet. It's bigger than anything in our databases." Zextar felt his blood turn cold. "Show me." The holographic display changed, zooming out to reveal a structure so enormous it made their mighty warship look like a tiny insect. The object was dark, angular, and clearly artificial. It moved slowly behind the human fleet like a sleeping giant. "What is that thing?" whispered Admiral Cullen. "I don't know," Zextar replied. "But we need to report this immediately. Open a channel to the Supreme Council." Within minutes, the bridge filled with the ghostly blue images of the Empire's most powerful leaders. Supreme Overlord Thanemore, a being so ancient that some said he remembered the Empire's founding, materialized at the center of the hologram. "High Admiral Zextar," the Overlord's voice boomed. "Explain this situation." "Your Excellence, 47 human vessels have entered our space without authorization. Behind them follows an unknown structure of unprecedented size. The humans show no signs of aggressive intent, but their very presence threatens our authority." The council members began speaking at once, their various alien languages creating a cacophony of sound. Some demanded immediate attack, others suggested negotiation, but Supreme Overlord Thanemore raised his hand for silence. "The Empire has ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years, he declared. "We have conquered species with weapons that could destroy stars. We have defeated armies that numbered in the billions. These humans think they can challenge us with 47 ships and some unknown object." He paused, his ancient eyes gleaming with authority that had subdued countless worlds. "High Admiral Zextar, you will deliver an ultimatum. The humans have 1 standard hour to leave our space or face the full might of the Empire. Deploy Battlefleet Omega, show them what happens to those who challenge our rule." The holograms faded, leaving Zextar alone with his doubts. Something about this situation felt wrong. In all his years of service, he had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, those instincts were screaming danger. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're requesting permission to speak with our commander." "Put them through." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a middle-aged human woman sitting in what appeared to be a simple metal chair. She wore no uniform, no medals, no signs of rank. Her gray hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she smiled as if greeting an old friend. "Hello," she said in perfect galactic standard. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen. I represent the human fleet you're undoubtedly concerned about." Zextar stepped forward, drawing himself up to his full, imposing height. "Human, you have violated Empire space. You will withdraw immediately or face destruction." Captain Chen's smile widened. "Oh, I'm sorry for the confusion. We're not here to cause trouble. We're actually here to help." "Help?" Admiral Cullen sputtered. "Help with what?" "Well," Chen said, settling back in her chair, We received some interesting information about 3 weeks ago. Seems like something nasty is heading this way. Something that makes your empire look like a children's playground. Zextar felt his scales prickle with unease. Explain. Have you ever heard of the Void Seekers? Chen asked casually. The bridge fell silent. Every officer knew that name. The Void Seekers were legend. Ancient destroyers who had supposedly wiped out entire galactic civilizations before disappearing into dark space millions of years ago. They were the stuff of nightmares and old stories told to frighten young soldiers. The Void Seekers are myth, Zextar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Are they? Chen asked. Then explain this. The view screen split, showing a star system on the right side. Zextar recognized it immediately, the Cathara system on the far rim of the galaxy. Home to 6 billion inhabitants across 4 worlds. As they watched, the stars began to go out. One by one, the system's sun and planets simply vanished, consumed by creeping darkness that spread like infection through space. The Cathara system died 4 days ago, Chen said quietly. The Nexari Empire to the galactic east fell silent 6 days before that. The Void Seekers are real, they're here and they're coming this way. Zextar stared at the impossible images. The Cathara system had possessed weapons that could crack planets. Their space fleet was among the most advanced in known space. If the Void Seekers could destroy them so easily, what do you want? He asked. Captain Chen leaned forward, her expression serious for the first time. We want to save the galaxy, all of it. Your empire, our colonies, every living being in this spiral arm. But we're going to need your help. Our help? Admiral Colleran laughed bitterly. Humans, you control 12 systems. The Empire commands 10,000 worlds and fleets that number in the millions. What could you possibly offer us? Chen's smile returned, but this time it held something different. Something that made Zextar's blood run cold with its confidence. We offer you hope, she said simply. Because unlike every other species the Void Seekers have faced, we've actually beaten them before. The bridge erupted in disbelief. Officers shouted questions and denials, but Chen raised her hand for silence, and somehow, incredibly, they quieted. The Void Seekers invaded human space 40 years ago, she continued. They destroyed 17 of our colonies before we stopped them. It cost us dearly, but we learned their weaknesses. We know how they think, how they fight, and most importantly, she paused, her eyes gleaming with the same dangerous confidence. We know how to kill them. Zextar felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet as Battlefleet Omega began arriving through hyperspace. Hundreds of massive warships, each one capable of destroying entire worlds, took position around the human fleet. The display of force was overwhelming, designed to intimidate any enemy into submission. But Captain Chen didn't look intimidated. She looked amused. Impressive fleet, she said admiringly. Though I have to ask, how do you think those beautiful ships will perform against enemies who can eat stars? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. Zextar realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare, about power, about the Empire's invincible might be about to change forever. Behind the human fleet, that massive unknown structure continued its slow, purposeful approach. And for the first time in his long career, High Admiral Zextar wondered if the Empire was about to face something it couldn't defeat. Unlikely allies. High Admiral Zextar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His Battlefleet Omega, pride of the Empire's navy, surrounded the small human fleet like predators circling wounded prey. 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, each one bristling with weapons that could level continents. Yet somehow, he felt like the prey. Sir, his sensor operator called out nervously. That structure behind the human fleet, it's not showing up properly on our scans. Every time we try to get a detailed reading, the data becomes corrupted. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the communications channel. That's the Remembrance, Admiral. She's designed to be hard to scan. Has to be, considering what she carries. What does it carry? Zextar demanded. 40 years of preparation, Chen replied cryptically. Every lesson we learned fighting the Void Seekers. Every weapon we've developed. Every strategy that worked. And the graves of everyone who died learning them. Admiral Colleran stepped closer to Zextar. Sir, this could be some kind of human trick. They're known for deception. But Zextar was studying the sensor data more carefully. The energy readings from that massive ship weren't matching anything in Empire databases. The power output was beyond their understanding. Yet it seemed to be running on some kind of containment system rather than conventional engines. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "prove to me that the Void Seekers are real. Prove to me that they're coming." "I was hoping you wouldn't ask that," Chen sighed. "Computer, transmit the Cathara recordings." The main view screen changed to show what appeared to be a normal star system. Planets orbited peacefully around their sun. Space stations dotted the void like jewels, and cargo ships moved between worlds in steady streams of commerce. Then, the darkness came. It began at the edge of the system, a creeping shadow that seemed to devour light itself. Where it touched, stars dimmed and died. Space stations vanished without sending distress signals. The planets themselves began to crack and crumble as some invisible force drained them of all energy. "This is the Cathara Defense Command." A panicked voice crackled over the recording. "Unknown entities have breached our outer defenses. Whole patrol fleets have gone silent. The darkness it's eating our sun." Zextar watched in horror as the system's star began to collapse, not in a natural supernova, but in an unnatural implosion that left behind something worse than a black hole. Absolute nothingness. "The recording cuts out after this," Chen said quietly. "The entire system just stopped existing. 6 billion souls gone without a trace." The bridge fell silent. Several officers made religious gestures of protection. Even Admiral Colleran's usual arrogance had faded to shocked silence. "How?" Zextar whispered. "How is such destruction possible?" "The Void Seekers don't just destroy," Chen explained. "They consume. Matter, energy, even space-time itself. They eat everything and leave behind absolute emptiness. We think they're not even from this dimension originally." "And you've fought these things?" "Fought them and won, at a cost that nearly broke our species." Chen's expression grew distant. "We lost 17 colonies, 3 billion people, and our entire first fleet before we figured out how to hurt them." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The sensor operator's voice cracked with fear. "Sir, massive energy signature approaching from deep space. It's bigger than anything our sensors can measure." The tactical display updated, showing a dark shape emerging from the void between stars. It was impossibly large, easily the size of a small moon, and it moved with purpose toward the Empire's border worlds. "Is that?" Colleran couldn't finish the question. "A Void Seeker harvester ship," Chen confirmed grimly. "Scouts must have reported back about the Empire's rich star systems. That's a planetary consumption vessel. It can drain an entire world in a matter of hours." Zextar felt his command training take over, pushing aside fear and shock. "Battlefleet Omega, all ships prepare for engagement. Target the unknown vessel and prepare to fire on my command." "Wait," Chen's voice cut through the communications. "Admiral, please. Your weapons won't work against them. You'll just lose your entire fleet and accomplish nothing." "Then what do you suggest?" Zextar snapped. "We let it destroy Empire worlds?" "No," Chen said firmly. "We show you how to fight them properly. But first, you need to understand what you're facing." On the view screen, the Void Seeker ship continued its approach. As it drew closer, details became visible. The vessel wasn't built. It was grown like some impossible cancer in space. Its surface writhed with organic-looking tendrils that reached out toward nearby asteroids and debris, absorbing them completely. "Traditional energy weapons don't affect them," Chen explained. "Kinetic weapons pass right through their hulls. Nuclear weapons actually feed them energy. Every conventional tactic we tried just made them stronger." "Then how did you defeat them?" Zextar demanded. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of terrible memory. "We learned that the Void Seekers exist partially outside our dimension. They phase in and out of normal space-time to avoid our attacks. But there's a brief moment during their feeding cycle when they have to fully materialize. And in that moment, they're vulnerable to a very specific type of weapon. Something we developed using technology we borrowed from their own ships." The implications hit Zextar like a physical blow. "You reverse-engineered their technology?" "We did what we had to do to survive. The Remembrance is equipped with 17 of these weapons. We call them Void Breakers. Each one is powered by contained Void Seeker energy turned against them. Admiral Colrin stepped forward. Even if this is true, why should we trust you? Why would humans risk themselves to save the Empire? Chen's laugh held no humor. Because, Admiral, the Void Seekers don't care about borders or politics. They'll consume every living thing in this galaxy if we let them. Human empire or otherwise, dead is dead, the sensor operator spoke up again. Sir, the Void Seeker vessel has changed course. It's heading directly for the Maltharan system. Population 4 billion. Zextar closed his eyes. Maltharan was one of the Empire's oldest colonies, a world of artists and scholars. Its destruction would be a blow to the heart of their civilization. How long do we have? He asked. At current speed, 16 hours, the operator replied. And how long would it take your Remembrance to intercept? Chen consulted something off-screen. 14 hours if we leave now. But Admiral, we'll need your fleet support. Our weapons are useless against them, you said. Your weapons, yes. But we need your ships to help evacuate the system and to provide cover while the Remembrance powers up its Void Breakers. The charging sequence takes time, and we'll be vulnerable. Zextar looked around his bridge at officers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades. He thought of the millions of worlds under their protection, the trillions of lives depending on their decision. What guarantees do we have that you won't turn these weapons against the Empire once the Void Seekers are gone? Chen met his gaze steadily. None. You'll have to trust us. Just like we're trusting you not to shoot us in the back once this is over. It was insane. Everything about this situation violated every principle of Imperial doctrine. They were being asked to ally with a species they barely knew, using weapons they didn't understand, against an enemy that shouldn't exist. But as Zextar watched the Void Seeker ship continue its relentless approach toward Maltharan, he realized they had no choice. All ships, he commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet communications. This is High Admiral Zextar. We are temporarily allying with the human fleet to face a common threat. Any ship commander who cannot accept this order is free to return to base. The rest of you, prepare for the strangest battle of your careers. To his surprise, not a single ship broke formation. Captain Chen, he continued, the Empire accepts your alliance. What are your orders? Chen smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. Thank you, Admiral. Computer, transmit tactical data to the Empire fleet. Show them how we're going to save the galaxy. As the combined human and Empire fleet prepared to depart for Maltharan, Zextar couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would be remembered as the day everything changed. The day the mighty Galactic Empire learned that there were things in the universe far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And the day they discovered that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. The test of fire. The journey to the Maltharan system took 13 hours and 47 minutes. For High Admiral Zextar, it was the longest trip of his life. During the voyage, Captain Chen had shared tactical data about the Void Seekers that challenged everything the Empire believed about warfare. These creatures didn't follow conventional physics. They existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, fed on energy itself, and possessed technology that made Empire weapons look like primitive clubs. The key, Chen explained during their strategy meeting, is timing. The Void Seekers have to fully materialize in our dimension to feed. When they do, they're solid for exactly 93 seconds. That's our window. Admiral Colrin studied the holographic displays showing Void Seeker anatomy. The creatures were enormous. Each individual was larger than their biggest battleships, and they moved through space like living shadows. These energy patterns, he said, pointing to the readings, they don't make sense. The power output is beyond our measurement capabilities. Because they're not generating power, Chen replied. They're channeling it from whatever dimension they originally came from. Think of them as living conduits. Zextar watched the tactical preparations with growing unease. His fleet of 200 warships would be reduced to support roles, evacuation assistance and defensive screens. The real fighting would be done by the mysterious human vessel Remembrance. Captain, he said, I need to understand what we're flying into. You said you fought these things before and won. What did it cost you? Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of terrible memory. "Everything," she said simply. "Our first fleet consisted of 300 ships and 90,000 crew members. When the Void Seekers invaded human space, we threw everything we had at them. Traditional tactics, overwhelming firepower, coordinated assaults. Nothing worked." She activated a holographic recording that showed a massive space battle. Human ships poured devastating fire into dark, writhing shapes that seemed to absorb the energy without effect. The USS Independence fired her main cannon directly into a Void Seeker's core. Chen continued. "The beam went right through it without causing any damage. Then the creature turned toward the ship and consumed it. Ship, crew, everything just gone." "How did you finally stop them?" "Desperation and luck," Chen admitted. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, our chief xenobiologist, was studying wreckage from a Void Seeker scout. She discovered that their technology operated on quantum frequencies we'd never seen before. She theorized that we could create weapons that matched those frequencies. "The Void Breakers?" "Yes, but building them required materials from the Void Seekers themselves. We had to let them destroy 17 colonies while we gathered enough wreckage to construct our first prototype." Zextar felt his blood chill. "You sacrificed 17 worlds for research?" "We tried evacuation, but..." Chen's voice trailed off. "The Void Seekers consume everything, Admiral. Not just matter and energy, they consume space itself. The people on those worlds didn't just die. They ceased to exist in any meaningful way." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about military defeat. The Void Seekers represented complete annihilation on a scale that defied comprehension. "Contact from the Remembrance," the communications officer announced. "Captain Chen, they're requesting permission to begin weapon charging procedures." "Granted," Chen replied. "All ships maintain minimum safe distance of 50 kilometers from the Remembrance during charging sequence." Through the main view screen, Zextar watched the massive human vessel begin to change. Sections of its hull slid apart, revealing internal structures that glowed with an eerie purple light. Energy readings spiked beyond his sensor's ability to measure. "What exactly are those weapons?" he asked. "Contained Void Seeker energy, weaponized and focused through quantum resonance chambers," Chen explained. "Each Void Breaker contains the equivalent destructive force of a dying star, but tuned to specific dimensional frequencies that can actually harm the Void Seekers." "And if something goes wrong during charging?" Chen's expression grew grim. "Then we create a hole in space-time that could potentially swallow this entire star system." Before Zextar could respond, alarms began blaring. The sensor operator's voice cracked with fear. "Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational distortions ahead. The Maltharan system is... It's changing!" The main view screen shifted to show the Maltharan system, but it was no longer the peaceful collection of worlds Zextar remembered. Space itself seemed to be warping around the system's star, creating spiral patterns of distorted light. "The Void Seeker is feeding," Chen said quietly. "It's begun the consumption process. How long do we have?" "Based on previous observations, complete planetary consumption takes 6 hours. The star will last maybe 12 hours after that. And your weapons?" Chen checked her displays. "Void Breakers will be fully charged in 47 minutes. "Then we're too late." "Not necessarily." Chen's voice carried a new determination. "We can interrupt the feeding process, but it'll require precision timing and significant risk." On the view screen they could see the Void Seeker creature clearly now. It was massive beyond comprehension, its dark bulk wrapped around Maltharan like a parasite. Tendrils of shadow extended from its body to the planet's surface, and where they touched, the world's surface simply vanished. "Dear gods," Admiral Colran whispered, "it's eating the planet alive." "All Empire ships," Zextar commanded, "begin immediate evacuation of Maltharan orbital stations. Evacuate as many civilians as possible before—" "Admiral," Chen interrupted, "look at the evacuation ships." Zextar turned his attention to the small civilian vessels fleeing the doomed world. As he watched, several of them simply winked out of existence as they passed too close to the Void Seeker's shadow tendrils. "They're not being destroyed," Chen explained. "They're being unmade. The Void Seekers don't just kill, they erase. Those people never existed." The horror of it struck Zextar like a physical blow. This wasn't warfare as he understood it. This was something far worse, the complete negation of existence itself. "Captain Chen, what are your orders?" "We're going to do something incredibly stupid," Chen replied. "We're going to fly the Remembrance directly into the Void Seeker's feeding zone and interrupt the process. When it turns to face us, it'll have to fully materialize. That's when we hit it with everything we have, the risk. If we miss, or if the Void Breakers don't work, the creature will consume our ship and gain access to our weapons technology. It could potentially become powerful enough to consume entire star systems in minutes instead of hours." Zextar looked around his bridge at officers who had sworn to protect the Empire with their lives. They looked terrified but determined. "All ships," he announced, "prepare for combat approach. We're going to save Maltharin." As the combined fleet moved toward the Maltharin system, Zextar couldn't help but marvel at the strangeness of the situation. The mighty Galactic Empire, rulers of 10,000 worlds, was following a small human fleet into battle against an enemy that shouldn't exist. But as he watched the Void Seeker continue its horrible feeding, he realized that conventional thinking no longer applied. They were facing something that challenged the very nature of reality itself. "Captain Chen," he said, "for both our species' sake, I hope you know what you're doing." Chen's voice came back steady and confident. "Remembrance to all ships. Beginning attack run in 30 minutes. This is for everyone we've lost and everyone we're going to save." As they approached the distorted space around Maltharin, Zextar felt a mixture of terror and anticipation. In the next hour, they would either save 4 billion lives and prove that the Void Seekers could be defeated, or they would doom the entire galaxy to a fate worse than death. The test of fire was about to begin. The heart of darkness. The Remembrance moved through space like a mountain-given flight. High Admiral Zextar watched from his command bridge as the massive human vessel approached the writhing darkness that surrounded Maltharin. The planet was barely recognizable now. Whole continents had been consumed, leaving behind patches of absolute nothingness. "Energy readings are off the scale," his sensor operator reported. "The gravitational distortions around the target are unlike anything in our databases." Captain Chen's voice crackled over the communications. "All ships maintain formation at minimum safe distance. The Remembrance is beginning final approach." Through the main view screen, Zextar could see the Void Seeker clearly now. The creature was impossibly vast, its dark bulk wrapped around what remained of Maltharin like some cosmic parasite. Tendrils of pure shadow extended from its body, reaching deep into the planet's core and drawing out something. Energy, matter. The very essence of existence itself. How do we know when it's fully materialized? Admiral Colrin asked, his voice tight with tension. "Trust me," Chen replied grimly. "You'll know." The Remembrance continued its approach, and Zextar could see sections of the ship's hull sliding open to reveal the Void Breaker weapons. They looked nothing like conventional armaments, more like mechanical flowers made of crystalline metal, each one glowing with that eerie purple light he'd seen during the charging sequence. "Void Breakers at 80% charge," came a voice from the human ship. "Beginning final targeting sequence." That's when the Void Seeker noticed them. The change was immediate and terrifying. The creature's feeding slowed, and something like a massive eye, though eye was too small a word for the enormous organ, turned toward the approaching human vessel. When that alien gaze fell upon the Remembrance, space itself seemed to shiver. "It's looking at us," someone whispered on the bridge. "No," Chen corrected, her voice grim. "It's deciding whether we're worth interrupting its meal." The Void Seeker made its decision. With a motion that defied physics, the creature began to detach itself from Maltharin. Its shadow tendrils withdrew from the planet's surface, and the gravitational distortions around the system shifted as the massive being turned to face the human ship. "All ships, brace for dimensional displacement." Chen shouted. Space around the fleet began to twist and warp. Stars shifted position in the sky, and Zextar felt his stomach lurch as gravity itself seemed to change direction. Several of his smaller ships reported navigation failures as their instruments struggled to cope with the impossible conditions. "What's happening?" Colrin demanded. "The Void Seeker is partially phasing out of our dimension," Chen explained. "It's trying to position itself for an attack without becoming vulnerable. But watch, it can't maintain that state while feeding." As she spoke, the creature began extending new tendrils toward the Remembrance. These weren't the feeding appendages it had used on Malthuran. These were weapons, reaching across space with predatory intent. "Contact!" the tactical officer shouted, shadow tendril approaching the Remembrance. The first tendril struck the human ship's shields and simply passed through them as if they didn't exist. Where it touched the hull, sections of the ship began to fade. Not explode or burn, but simply cease to exist. "Hull breach on decks 15 through 20, came a panicked voice from the Remembrance. "We're losing structural integrity." "Hold course," Chen commanded. "Wait for full materialization." More tendrils lashed out, each one carving pieces of reality away from the human vessel. Zextar watched in horror as the Remembrance began to dissolve under the assault. "Captain Chen, you have to retreat." "Negative. Void breakers at 95% charge." Almost there, the Void Seeker's attack intensified. A dozen shadow tendrils now struck the Remembrance, and entire sections of the massive ship simply vanished. But the human vessel pressed on, its remaining Void Breaker weapons still glowing with deadly purpose. "Warning," the sensor operator called. "The creature is beginning to fully materialize." Zextar could see it happening. The Void Seeker's form, previously shifting and insubstantial, began to solidify. Details became visible, ridged chitin that looked like infected bone, organs that pulsed with unnatural light, and those terrible feeding tendrils that dripped with consumed matter. "Now I can see why you call them Void Seekers," Colrin muttered. "They seek to return everything to the void." The creature was now fully solid in their dimension, its massive bulk blocking out stars. But its attack had also intensified. More tendrils lashed out at the Remembrance, and the human ship was rapidly disintegrating under the assault. "Void breakers at 100%. Came the report. "All weapons ready to fire." "This is Captain Chen to all ships," came the voice over communications, calmer now despite the chaos around her. "If we don't make it, tell Earth that we kept our promise. We showed the galaxy how to fight these things." "Wait," Zextar said suddenly. "Captain, your ship is dissolving. How are you still alive?" Chen's laugh came through the static-filled channel. "Did I mention the Remembrance has some special features? The command section is equipped with the same dimensional shielding we reverse-engineered from Void Seeker technology. We can survive in the void." For a while, the implications hit Zextar like a thunderbolt. "You planned this. You knew your ship would be destroyed." "We hoped it wouldn't come to this," Chen admitted. "But yes, the Remembrance was designed to be sacrificed if necessary. The Void Breakers work best at point-blank range." On the view screen, the human ship was now barely recognizable. Most of its bulk had been consumed by the Void Seeker's attack, leaving only the heavily armored command section and the glowing Void Breaker weapons. "Firing solution locked," came the tactical report. "All Void Breakers targeted on the creature's core." "For Earth, for the Empire, for everyone in this galaxy," Chen said quietly. "Fire." 17 beams of purple light erupted from the remnants of the Remembrance. Unlike conventional energy weapons, these beams seemed to bend space around them, creating ripples in reality itself as they struck the Void Seeker's massive form. The effect was immediate and devastating. The creature's scream echoed across dimensions, a sound that bypassed the ears and struck directly at the mind. Several officers on Zextar's bridge collapsed, overwhelmed by the alien agony. Where the Void Breaker beams struck, the creature's flesh began to unravel. Not burning or exploding, but coming apart at a fundamental level, as if the very concept of its existence was being challenged. "It's working," Colrin shouted. "The weapons are effective." But their celebration was premature. The Void Seeker, wounded but not defeated, began to phase back toward its dimensional sanctuary. If it escaped now, it would return with others of its kind. No. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. It's trying to flee. All Empire ships concentrate fire on the creature's base. Keep it materialized. Our weapons won't affect it. Zextar protested. They don't need to damage it, just irritate it enough to keep its attention. The angrier it gets, the more solid it becomes. It was insane, but Zextar had come too far to doubt the humans now. All ships concentrate fire on the Void Seeker. Keep shooting until it dies! 200 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. Their energy beams and kinetic projectiles passed harmlessly through the creature's form. But the constant barrage seemed to annoy it. Instead of phasing out of their dimension, the Void Seeker turned its attention back to the Imperial fleet. It's working, Chen shouted, recharging Void Breakers for second salvo. But as the creature turned toward the Imperial ships, Zextar realized they had made a terrible mistake. The Void Seeker's wounds were healing. The damaged sections of its body were regenerating with matter drawn from the half-consumed planet below. Captain Chen, it's recovering. I see it. Voidbreakers charging, but we need more time. The creature lashed out with renewed fury. Shadow tendrils swept toward the Imperial fleet, and where they touched, ships simply ceased to exist. The ISV Conquest, a dreadnought that had served the Empire for 2 centuries, vanished in an instant. No explosion, no debris, just empty space where a mighty warship had been moments before. All ships evasive maneuvers. Zextar commanded, but he knew it was futile. How do you dodge something that can unmake you from reality itself? Admiral, Chen's voice cut through the chaos, there's something you need to know. The Void Seekers don't just consume matter and energy. They consume information, memories, knowledge, the very concept of existence. Everyone on that ship didn't just die. It's as if they never existed at all. The horror of that revelation struck home as Zextar realized he couldn't remember the name of the Conquest's captain. The ship had carried a crew of 8,000, but he couldn't recall a single face, a single name. They had been erased not just from life, but from memory itself. How long until the Void Breakers recharge? 30 seconds. But I don't think we have 30 seconds. The creature was moving faster now, its massive bulk sliding through space toward the heart of the Imperial formation. More ships vanished, cruisers, destroyers, entire squadrons consumed in moments. The carefully ordered battle formation dissolved into chaos as captains tried desperately to avoid the reaching tendrils of nothingness. "Sir," his communications officer called out. "We're receiving transmissions from across the Empire. Long-range sensors are detecting more Void Seekers approaching from deep space." "Dozens of them!" Zextar's blood turned to ice. If this was just one creature and dozens more were coming, how long until they arrive? Based on current approach vectors, the first wave will reach Empire space in 72 hours. Captain Chen, did you hear that? I heard it. That's why we can't let this one escape. If it reports back to the others about our weapons, they'll adapt. We'll lose our only advantage. On the tactical display, Zextar could see the Remembrance's remaining Void Breaker weapons powering up again. But the human ship was barely functional now. Most of its mass consumed by the creature's earlier attack. 20 seconds to full charge, Chen reported. But we're not going to survive long enough to fire. The Void Seeker had turned its full attention back to the remnants of the Remembrance. Multiple shadow tendrils converged on the tiny remaining portion of the human ship. In seconds, it would be completely consumed. That's when Admiral Kulren did something that would be remembered in Imperial history forever. All ships ramming speed. He commanded over the fleet communications. Concentrate on the creature's main body. Give the humans time to fire. Kulren, no. Zextar shouted, but it was too late. 40 Imperial warships broke formation and accelerated directly toward the Void Seeker. Their captains knew they were flying to their deaths, but they flew anyway. As each ship struck the creature's form, it vanished, consumed completely. But the impact seemed to stagger the massive being, disrupting its attack on the Remembrance. "You magnificent fools!" Chen's voice came over the communications, thick with emotion. Void Breakers at full charge. Firing now. The second salvo of Void Breaker weapons struck the creature center mass. This time, the purple beams found their mark in wounds that hadn't fully healed. The effect cascaded through the creature's body like a chain reaction. The Void Seeker's scream this time was different. Not just pain, but something like surprise. As if it had never encountered anything that could actually hurt it before. Large sections of the creature's body began to collapse in on themselves, creating brief tears in space-time that swallowed nearby asteroids. The shadow tendrils withdrew, writhing in apparent agony. "It's dying," Colleran shouted from his own ship, but their victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 200 ships that had entered the system, fewer than 60 remained. The others hadn't been destroyed, they had been erased, along with everyone aboard them. "Captain Chen, are you still there?" "Still here, Admiral. The Remembrance's life support is failing, but we're alive." "Can you finish it?" "One more shot should do it." "But Admiral, I need you to understand something. When this creature dies, it's going to create a massive dimensional rift. Everyone needs to be at least 100 kilometers away. All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance," Zextar commanded. As the Imperial fleet pulled back, the Void Seeker made one final desperate attack. Instead of reaching for the ships, it turned back toward Maltharan. If it was going to die, it would take the planet with it. "No," Chen shouted. "It's going to consume the entire world before it dies. That'll give it enough energy to survive." The creature's shadow tendrils, now grown to enormous size, reached down toward the planet's surface. In minutes, 4 billion people would be erased from existence. "Captain," Zextar said quietly, "do what you have to do." Chen's voice was steady when she replied. "All ships, this is the Remembrance. It's been an honor fighting alongside the Imperial Navy. Tell the galaxy that humans and the Empire stood together when it mattered most." The final Void Breaker shot was different from the others. Instead of multiple beams, all the remaining energy was concentrated into a single, massive pulse that tore a hole in reality itself. The beam struck the Void Seeker just as its tendrils touched Maltharan's surface. For a moment, the creature seemed frozen in space and time. Then it began to collapse, its massive form folding in on itself like a house of cards in a hurricane. The dimensional rift that followed was beyond description. Space twisted and warped, stars changed color, and for a brief moment Zextar could swear he saw through to another universe entirely. When the distortion finally cleared, the Void Seeker was gone. Not destroyed, gone as if it had never existed. And with it went the Remembrance and its brave crew. Maltharan hung in space, scarred but alive. Most of the planet's surface was gone, consumed during the creature's feeding, but the core remained intact. 4 billion people had been saved, though they would need new worlds to call home. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving messages from across the Empire. The approaching Void Seekers have changed course. They're retreating back into deep space." Zextar allowed himself a moment of relief. The immediate threat was over, but he knew this was only the beginning. "Open a channel to the Empire High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we need to speak with the human government immediately. We have a war to plan." As the surviving ships of Battlefleet Omega began rescue operations around the damaged world, Zextar looked out at the stars and wondered what other horrors might be lurking in the dark spaces between galaxies. But for the first time since this nightmare began, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. The humans had shown them how to fight the Void Seekers. Now it was time to show the galaxy how to survive. The new alliance, 6 months after the Battle of Maltharan, the Imperial Palace on Throne World hummed with unprecedented activity. In the Grand Council chamber where the Empire's fate had been decided for millennia, representatives from 50 different species gathered around a massive holographic display. High Admiral Zextar stood beside the projection table, his dress uniform decorated with new medals, honors granted not just by the Empire but by a dozen grateful worlds. Across from him, wearing the simple gray uniform of the Human Defense Corps, stood Admiral Sarah Chen. She had survived the destruction of the Remembrance, rescued by Imperial ships just before her command section's life support failed. The human government had promoted her and given her command of their entire deep space fleet. It was a force that, while small by Imperial standards, now commanded respect throughout the galaxy. The situation reports are not encouraging. Supreme Overlord Thanemore announced to the assembled delegates. His ancient voice carried the weight of authority that had ruled the galaxy for centuries, but there was something new in it now: uncertainty. The holographic display showed the current state of galactic defenses. Red zones marked areas where Void Seeker scouts had been spotted. Yellow zones indicated regions under threat. Green zones, representing areas considered safe, were disturbingly small. In the past 6 months, Admiral Chen reported, we've confirmed Void Seeker activity in 47 different star systems. They're probing our defenses, testing our responses. The creature we destroyed at Maltharan was just the beginning. Ambassador Kreltar, representing the Nexus Confederation, raised a clawed hand. What about the weapons? The Void Breakers? Can they be mass-produced? Chen exchanged glances with Zextar before answering. That's complicated. Each Void Breaker requires materials harvested from Void Seeker technology. We've been analyzing the wreckage from Maltharan, but progress is slow. How slow? Demanded General Vexnar of the warrior clans. At current production rates, we can build maybe 12 new Void Breaker weapons per year. The Empire alone has 10,000 worlds to protect. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. Representatives shouted questions and demands in a dozen different languages. The magnitude of the threat was becoming clear. They were facing an enemy that could destroy entire civilizations, and their only effective weapons could barely be produced fast enough to matter. Supreme Overlord Thanemore called for silence. Admiral Chen, you've studied these creatures longer than anyone. In your assessment, what are our chances? Chen was quiet for a long moment, her expression grave. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of hard experience. Based on what we've learned, the Void Seekers aren't just raiders or conquerors. They're something far worse. They're a cosmic cleansing force. Every few million years, they emerge from whatever dimension they call home and systematically purge the galaxy of complex life. She activated a new section of the holographic display, showing star charts that stretched back geological ages. We found evidence of their previous visits. The Great Dying 65 million years ago, when 90% of all species went extinct. We think that was them. The Dark Age 30 million years ago, when entire stellar civilizations vanished without a trace. Them again. Ambassador Kreltar's voice was barely a whisper. How many times have they done this? We've identified at least 12 major extinction events that match Void Seeker patterns. They return every few million years to reset the galaxy's development. Apparently, we've reached the point in our evolution where they consider us a threat. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. They weren't just fighting for their current civilizations. They were fighting for the right of complex life to exist in their galaxy at all. There has to be something we can do, General Vexnar insisted. Some way to fight back more effectively. Chen smiled for the first time during the briefing. Actually, there is, but it's going to require something unprecedented in galactic history. She manipulated the holographic controls, and the display changed to show detailed schematics of a massive space station. We call it the Forge Station. It's a mobile weapons platform designed to mass-produce Void Breaker technology. The station itself would be larger than most moons, equipped with manufacturing facilities, research laboratories, and the most advanced defensive systems we can build. Zextar studied the plans with professional interest. The power requirements alone would be enormous. You'd need the energy output of an entire star system. Which is exactly what we're proposing, Chen replied. The Forge Station would be built around a neutron star, using its massive gravitational field to power the manufacturing process. We estimate it could produce 100 Void Breakers per month once fully operational. Supreme Overlord Thanemore leaned forward in his throne. What would such a project require? Everything, Chen said bluntly. The combined resources of every major civilization in the galaxy, the Empire's industrial capacity, the Confederation's technology, the warrior clan's expertise in defensive systems, species that have been enemies for millennia, would need to work together. And who would control this station? Ambassador Kreltar asked suspiciously. No one, Chen replied, surprising everyone. And everyone. The Forge Station would be governed by a joint council with representatives from every contributing species. No single government would have the power to use it against others. The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered the proposal. It was ambitious beyond anything ever attempted, a truly galactic alliance dedicated to a single purpose. Admiral Colran, now promoted to command the Empire's reformed battle fleet Omega, spoke up. What about the Void Seekers themselves? Won't they try to stop construction? Absolutely, Chen acknowledged. Intelligence reports suggest they're massing for a major assault. We estimate they'll attack in full force within 2 years. The Forge Station needs to be operational before then, or we'll face the same fate as every other civilization they've purged. Supreme Overlord Thanemore stood, his ancient frame still imposing despite the weight of eons. The Empire has ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years. We have seen species rise and fall, watched civilizations bloom and wither, but never have we faced a threat that challenges the very concept of existence itself. He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives who had been enemies, allies and neutral parties for centuries. The time for old rivalries is past. The Galactic Empire hereby commits its full resources to this project. We call upon every thinking species in this galaxy to join us. One by one, the other delegates stood and voiced their commitment. The Nexus Confederation pledged their advanced technology. The warrior clans offered their defensive expertise. Even the reclusive deep-core worlds agreed to share their knowledge of stellar engineering. As the formal alliance was declared, Chen felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. They had united the galaxy in common cause, but the task ahead was monumentally difficult. Admiral, Zextar said quietly as the formal ceremonies continued around them, do you really think we can build this station in time? Chen looked at the holographic display showing the Forge Station plans, then at the diverse group of beings who had just committed to the most ambitious project in galactic history. 6 months ago, the Empire and humanity were strangers, she replied. Today we're allies planning to build a weapon that could save every living thing in the galaxy. I've learned not to underestimate what impossible things become possible when survival is at stake. Through the great windows of the council chamber, the stars shone with their ancient light. Somewhere among those distant suns, the Void Seekers were gathering their forces for what they expected to be another routine purge. But this time would be different. This time the galaxy would be ready. The greatest construction project in galactic history was about to begin, and with it, the hope that intelligence and determination could triumph over the darkness that sought to consume everything. As the Alliance delegates began planning the details of their unprecedented cooperation, neither Chen nor Zextar could know that their victory at Maltharan had already changed the galaxy forever. The Void Seekers, for the first time in millions of years, had encountered meaningful resistance, and in the vast, cold spaces between dimensions, ancient intelligences were beginning to take notice. The real war was about to begin. The end. Thank you for reading this HFY story. The tale of humanity's unexpected alliance with the Galactic Empire shows that sometimes the greatest threats require the most unlikely partnerships. When faced with cosmic-level extinction, old enemies must become new allies, and even the smallest species can hold the key to galactic salvation.